Hello and welcome to the Be Glad movement. My name's Pollyanna and I'm on a mission to bring you as many stories as possible of good coming out of bad and reasons to be glad. And today I'm joined by Jordan. Jordan is the first story of the year, so I'm really pleased. It's the first time I put makeup on this year as well, so hurrah. Jordan, I'm going to hand over to you and let you get stuck in. Take us back to what it was like growing up in Blackpool and where your story sort of really begins.
Yeah, well, firstly, thanks for having me on. I'm really honoured to be the first guest of 2019, and especially since you put makeup on, it's for me just. But no, as you can probably tell, I'm a northerner by trade. Although living in the south these days, I'm ashamed to admit I'm an honorary southerner now on the south coast. but grew up in Blackpool. I had a good upbringing. I grew up on a council estate from a working class family, but I never went without, so to speak. Really loving parents. My father was a career Royal Marine. He served in the military. My mum, again, working class family, worked all her life, still does today, and very proud. And I think a lot of the positive aspects of my life certainly come from the influence from my parents. I would certainly say that they're the biggest role models in my life still today, and have been all my life. I went to very ordinary schools, and I left school at 16, unfortunately, with not too many qualifications. I left school with no GCSEs of any relevance, and joined the military at 16 years old. I guess it was a case of sort of process of elimination. I couldn't go to sixth form college or university or anything like that because I didn't have the grades. I was always a footballer at school and played at a good level. And I thought, like every little boy, I guess that was the dream, go and be a footballer.
Yeah.
And that's money. But the reality was that I probably wasn't dedicated or committed enough, although I played at a really good level. I was on the books of Preston North End, Blackpool, Man City, Wimbledon until 16 years old, and spent most of my life in the youth systems of those clubs. So, I thought of nothing else except for going to play football. And I guess when that dream was finished at 16, when you discover the other things in life, mainly ladies, alcohol, and whatever else you find on the streets of Blackpool.
Ladies with makeup on.
Yeah.
I wanted to just quickly ask you, Jordan, if you don't mind, because I'm a military wife myself, and it just sort of interests me that so you grew up in Blackpool. Did you not have to move around at all with your dad's work, or did he basically?
No, so I in the very very early part of my life, yeah, but he was what my dad is. He's late 60s now, so his career had finished. He served in the Falklands as a platoon sergeant, and he left the military in the late 80s. So I'm 35 now. I know I don't look it, but oily gule. But no, I'm 35 now, and my father is, will be best part of 70 soon. So I spent my early days in that sort of domain, but not as I really grew up. I had quite a lot of stability actually from someone who was in a military family, fortunately.
And do you think it's the fact that your dad was a Royal Marine sort of drew you towards the military, as well as maybe not getting the grades and not becoming a pro footballer?
I don't think so, because I never felt pressured or influenced from a military perspective from my father. He was very supportive of whatever I wanted to do in life, and I think the military was just a natural progression from school because, as a lot of people who don't have the grades, it's almost an escape. And if you like playing sport, as you know as well as me, and the military is a great sort of facilitator of that. And I played for the army for a long time. I played for my corps, my regiment, and so I was very fortunate to go and travel the world playing sport as well. Lots of football tours around the US and the sort of Asia and the Middle East and things. So very lucky in that respect. But I remember somebody actually once said to me in the army, I got promoted quite early in my career from a sort of private soldier to a lance corporal, and after about 18 months I was promoted, and one of the senior guys who'd done about 15 years said, he looked at me and just shook his head and said, I wish I was bloody good at football. There was a backhanded compliment in there somewhere.
Yeah.
I don't think he rated my soldiering skills that much, but I could kick a ball, and that sort of got me through most of my military career. But yeah, and while I was in the military as well, I did a lot of studying because I was one of the few people, I guess, in the military who who left the military and then rejoined. I was a rejoiner. So I did 5 or 6 years, left, struggled to survive in civvy street, so to speak, and then rejoined the military again for another 3 or 4 years, and then left.
Okay, that's interesting. That's interesting because you hear about people struggling, and you went back in. Reflecting back on that, what was that time like? What did you find you struggled with most when you?
I think when you're in the military, certainly as a young soldier, and you perhaps don't realise it at the time, but you're actually part of something incredibly special. You take it for granted in many respects. You see getting up and having a shave every morning, ironing your kit and putting on a uniform as a chore when you're a serving soldier. But actually, that's taken away from you, and you're on the other side, outside the wire. You sort of lose that sense of pride and prestige. And these days I can't wait to put my medals on Remembrance Day, whereas when you're in the military, it's a chore to go and shine them for a parade every morning or whatever. And I think you're part of a very special club, and it's only when you leave that club that you realise how special it was. And I found it very difficult to transition because I was in a combat, a sort of frontline unit. I was in the armoured corps, so I was in tanks, so to speak. So again, one of the sort of the negatives, if you like, of having no academic qualifications was you're either you're in a frontline role by default. You're going in a tank or you're going on foot and you're going into battle, and that's one of the downsides to not having any academic qualifications, because those with qualifications typically go off to engineering units, the REME, or logisticians or signals or whatever it might be. But if you don't have the grades, unfortunately, you're going on in a combat frontline role. And I didn't see that as a negative, because actually the sort of the ethics, the team building, the cohesion is probably tighter in a combat unit than it is in any other unit, I think, in the armed forces, because you literally, your lives depend on each other. So I learned a lot, and I'm very proud of my time in the cavalry, and I got to do some really interesting things, including working as an intelligence collator and analyst on several tours of Iraq, which is ironically what took me into working on Hunted on Channel 4, which was, it's funny how life works out and the twists and turns, because I certainly didn't think 15 years ago when I did my intelligence training that would 15 years later say somebody on Channel 4 say, actually, that skill's quite useful to us and we want to, we want to. So it's a funny old world, and I've sort of learned that actually life is a bit like, I sort of see I like the analogy that life is like a train, a sort of freight train that's passing you by all the time, and all the carriages are like opportunities, and the train doesn't stop for you, and you have to throw yourself at those opportunities and just see where they take you and where that train ends up. And I think, one of the things that I've certainly learned is that opportunities around us all the time, everywhere, and what we just have to sort of switch our beacons on and hone into where they are, because they're literally everywhere, and you find them in the most unsuspecting places as well, I find.
Yeah, totally. I love that analogy of the freight train, because I personally am finding lots of opportunities opening up, and it's really exciting. But like you say, it's things that maybe you don't think are going to come to much at the time, but if you didn't do it, you'd never know. And the worst thing you can do is sort of sit back and wait for opportunities to come to you. You have to, even if you think, oh, I might not like that, just doing and having another experience, learning something new. It doesn't matter if you don't like it. It's good that you've now discovered that you don't like it. Move on, do something else,
Exactly.
do something else. And you never know when one of those things is going to come back up and help you with something that you need in the future. So I love that train analogy and throwing yourself at one of the carriages.
Yeah, and it's something I try to, I try to teach a lot. I say volunteer a lot in schools and things. I try and do a lot of talks for children from sort of quite deprived areas, or people who are struggling with where they're going to go in life. And I think, I sort of have my own little rule, and I call it my ABC rule. It's quite a simple rule, being a Blackpool lad, but I say A is for attitude. And I think if you have the right attitude, regardless of how talented you are, how what qualifications you have, what experience you have, I think if you have the right attitude, that will take you a lot further than most things in life. I always say build relationships everywhere you go. Respect everyone, build relationships, forge relationships, because one of my friends actually said to me many years ago, he said, the currency of real networking is generosity. You know, see what you can give to people, see what you can help with people. And if you do that, life is very reciprocal. You know, don't go out looking to see what you can take, see what you can give, and naturally good things tend to happen. And that's sort of a mantra I've tried to apply, and I think it's very true. And the third one, C, is continuous professional development. You know, again, it links into attitude, but you can never stop learning. Everywhere you go in life, whether it's at home, whether it's in business, in the workplace, or with your family, you know, take every day as a chance to learn, because again, linking into attitude, it's just that keeping an open mind, because you don't know what's around the corner. And also you never know when life's going to be taken away, do you? You know, we lose so many people to various things. And you know, and sometimes when I'm having a bad day or complaining about something, I just think of the friends or the family that aren't here anymore, and think that, you know, they would give just to have one more breath on this planet, they would give everything, and we sort of take that for granted sometimes. So I think it is important to reflect, you know, on how fortunate we are to still be here and the opportunities we have.
Yeah, totally agree with you on that. So let's go back to your military career. You had that break. At what point, when was it you decided to go working on the ships and doing the whole piracy thing?
Yeah, so I did my, as I say, I left the military and then really struggled, found it really difficult to adapt to civilian life. You know, I couldn't pay my bills. I remember the sort of the turning point was I was working actually as a static security guard on one of these big Tesco Express stores. You know, that sort of where you do your supermarket shopping. And this was in 2005, and I'd just come back from Iraq, and we'd had a tough time. We'd lost quite a few people, and I'd been on a few patrols where, you know, we'd came back having lost several colleagues and friends. And I thought, you know what, there's got to be more to life than this. You know, I don't want to be putting my friends in body bags or whatever it is. You know, there's got to be more. And I remember I signed off after an incident. There was 3 members of a regiment called the Staffordshire Regiment on the 16th of July 2005, and we lost Private Hewitt, Private Spicer, and Lieutenant Shearer on a patrol. And I remember that next day I give him my sort of notice and said, you know what, no, this isn't for me anymore. Yeah. And I guess that was a knee-jerk reaction at the time. You know, you'd seen something quite horrific, and you thought, you know, I don't want to see that again. And I decided that I was going to leave the military, and I joined the police, actually. My initial thing was I joined Lancashire Constabulary, and things didn't work out. I didn't like it. I didn't enjoy it. And actually, I upset quite a lot of police officers probably when I say this, but it was a discussion I had many times with a lot of the hunted crew, because obviously there's a big mix of police and military on there. Mm-hmm. And what I found, and again, I talk from my experience, not from anyone else's, because everyone has different experiences, but I found there was a big difference between the police and the military. And I found that the military is very much a lifestyle, and it's built on the ethos of the team, and everything is about the team objectives. Whereas with my experience with the police I found it was a bit like it was a job, and people had their own career objectives and their own goals. And actually the team wasn't as sort of prominent as what the military was. Whereas, you know, I find in the military, if something goes wrong, as long as everyone's safe and all right, it's not the end of the world. And you always cover for each other if something has happened. Whereas in the police, it was a different experience for me. And so, yeah, my police career was very short-lived, only a couple of months, actually, which is when I went on to be a security guard on this Tesco Express superstore. And that was quite a low point, having served my country. And then finding myself working as this static security guard, and take nothing away from that, because, you know, it's an important job that needs doing. But sure. My job for 12 hours a day was to press this button on this barrier to let the cars in. And the irony was, when I rejoined the army, the first job I had at camp was to stand on the barrier on the front gate and press the button. But it felt so much better doing it in a military uniform than in my sort of, I won't mention the security company, my other uniform. But I learned a lot, because I stood on this barrier for 12 hours a day for 6 days a week, and I couldn't even pay the bills still. You know, it was incredible. I was earning the minimum wage, and it gave me 12 hours a day to reflect on my life and what I wanted to do in life. And I eventually made the decision to go back into the British Army. But I went in with a completely different attitude the second time, because I knew that if I came out again, I didn't have the qualifications or the experience to progress any further, because I had these grand sort of visions of going into close protection or maritime security. And in 2004, 2005, this was an industry that was predominantly littered with special forces, ex-special forces. So the market was extremely competitive. And so I was competing against people with a lot more experience and a stronger CV, if you like. So I knew that I had to do something to differentiate myself in a crowded marketplace. And as you all know, that the security industry is probably the most competitive market in the world for ex-military or police personnel. So you have to see, how can I make myself stand out? How does that young lad from the council estate in Blackpool with no qualifications pitch himself against, the British Special Forces elite who have just done their time? And for me, I discovered academia, and I discovered actually that going to enroll on a university course while I was serving, which was incredible because it was funded by the military as well. And there's a lot of, for anyone who's in the military or thinking about leaving, there are so many systems there to help you. And I'm not saying that they're going to jump out at you or the military is even going to put them in front of you. But again, going back to opportunities, you have to dig around and throw yourself at them and find them. But there is a lot of, there's a lot of funding there. And it was incredible because eventually the military, over the next 4 years, they paid for my foundation degree. I had to start on a foundation degree because I had no qualifications and they wouldn't let me enroll on a bachelor's degree. But eventually I did my foundation degree, my bachelor's degree and my master's degree over the next 4 or 5 years, which was all completely funded, which was about £50,000 worth of education. And when I left in 2009, that was a huge differentiator, because what you find is the guys from the special forces or the perceived elite regiments like the Royal Marines, the parachute regiment, these guys have got bags of experience, but what they don't have is that perhaps wider understanding with a master's degree of, where you can critically analyze a situation and then go and deliver the results to, I don't know, the board at Shell or BP or a major oil and gas player or whatever it might be. And I come to learn actually that a superb soldier on the battlefield isn't necessarily a superb security consultant. And I found that although there are transferable skills, there is also a very different skill set required. And perhaps that guy who is leading the bayonet charge isn't necessarily the guy who is presenting to the shareholders, an oil major. And I found a bit of a niche. And I also used the academia and the academic studies to do research into the market that I wanted employment in. So I sort of measured all my studies around piracy, around maritime security, around maritime counter-terrorism. And then what I was able to do was take all my findings and results to maritime security companies and people and ship owners and people in the maritime sector and say, did you know that, I've spoke to all the shipping companies in the world, and for example, in the simplest terms, nobody is doing much about maritime cybersecurity on board these ships. These are vessels that rely on connectivity, but nobody's protecting them from a cyber attack. And to be able to take that sort of information as market research, even though it was my personal studies, it put me in quite a nice place to be able to use that to my advantage. And I guess that's where I started on the vessels. And, I did 4 or 5 years as an armed security team leader. And then I started working with coast guards and governments and still do that today to a certain extent. That's my sort of day-to-day job. A couple of days a week is to advise shipping companies and governments on maritime security policy, strategy, and dealing with pirates and cyber and so on.
Very cool, very cool. But I guess if you hadn't had those times stood at the barrier outside Tesco's, you wouldn't have had time to think fully about. You could have just had a full career in the army, couldn't you? You could have just carried on, and then to come out, have that time of reflecting, and then know what it is you want to do, to be more focused. Sometimes it helps to sort of get offline to then come back online more powerfully, if that makes sense. So
no, absolutely. And I think one thing I always say to people actually is reflection is such an important part of life. And I think certainly like you, I work and try to surround myself with people who are very positive and people who are highly motivated and want to go and achieve things and smash their goals. And what I always say to them people as well, because I think people who are very highly motivated, they often forget to stop and reflect because they're so focused on what's next, and I'm as bad as anybody. I'm sort of, I do one charity project and I'm thinking, right, what we're launching next, and we go again. And you sort of stop and you need to stop and just look over your shoulder and go, well, actually, we've come a long way here. We've just raised a load of money. We've raised loads of awareness or whatever it might be. And we need to celebrate those little victories, those little moments of glory. And it might only be having a pint one afternoon with your friend in the pub to say, do you know what? We did that and we achieved what we set out to do. Or it might be something a lot bigger. But I think to celebrate those small wins and glories and reflect is so important in life to anybody. And it doesn't matter how big the challenge is or how small the challenge is. It could be, completing one of your mock exams in year 9 at school, or it could be conquering Everest. But you have to stop and reflect at every sort of obstacle that you overcome, I think.
Sure, totally. Yeah, because we can get overwhelmed with the next thing, thinking, oh, it seems so unachievable, and then forget everything that we've achieved already on the way to that thing. And you need to absorb the goodness and let that fuel you to go further.
Absolutely. I think the same in business as well. Having been in business a few years, and not just in adventure, but in business, and even in family life. If you're having some struggles at home, maybe people. I found being a father initially, it was very stressful. It was very difficult because it's a responsibility that you've taken on, and you're never prepared for it. Nobody knows what it's going to be like to be a parent until you become one. And when you've gone through a few challenges and struggles, and it could be something as simple as sleepless nights with your youngster getting up every 10 minutes or whatever it is, but when you've managed to get them into a pattern, and you and your partner need to go, do you know what, it was difficult, we've had our moments, but we did this, didn't we? And we got through it. High five, exactly. It's the teamwork, and that's you need to apply that not just in the workplace or whatever you do for a living, but also in the home life. I think make your partner and your family your best friends. Your team, your little tribe, I think is the best mantra.
Yeah, 100%. So you've got your book Citadel, and how's that going? Sales going well, and what's happening with that at the moment?
Yeah, no, it was really well. So it came out in November last year. The year before now. So 2nd of November 2017. So sales were really good. It was a top 10 in the UK. It was an Amazon bestseller. So really, I overwhelmed with the support, and it was what was fascinating about the book. Actually, probably what I come to learn in the end was I wanted to tell the story of the pirates and the Somali people, but most people I speak to didn't really care about that. They were more interested in the journey and how I came to be on the front line and dealing with pirates from the kid from Blackpool. I'm working on my next book at the moment, which will come out hopefully at the end of this year, if not early next year. And that sort of the feedback from the first book has inspired me in the way I'm going to write the next book, and I'm going to open up a lot of things like mental health, post-traumatic growth, and those sort of taboo subjects that we need to speak a lot more about in life. So hopefully we can help a lot more people with a bit of luck.
Very cool. Yeah, I think people are. I mean, that's why I want sort of real life people on the Be Glad movement show. Now I'm going to call it that.
Yeah.
So because people are interested in people, and people are interested in the elements that they can relate to, that make it more personal, that make you feel, that although people get put on a pedestal, I mean, obviously you've been put on a pedestal with Hunted and all that kind of thing, but you are still a real person. You were still a kid that came from Blackpool, and people are interested in those steps that got you there, aren't they? So I love that.
I think so. And I think if we have a sort of, just as humans, as people, we have a responsibility to help each other, and if we can share our experiences, our challenges, our problems, it means that somebody else doesn't perhaps have to go through those problems and those issues. And I think that's really important, that things like what you're doing with the Be Glad movement is incredible, really, because just if somebody's listening and they are struggling or having a bad day, it's important for them to understand that we all have bad days and we all have low points, and I think in this day and age of things like social media, where everyone's portraying to be living the dream every moment of the day, it can be quite damaging to the next generation, because people say to me, "Oh, your life's brilliant," and actually, they will learn in the next book it isn't as brilliant as perhaps a Facebook or a Twitter post may seem, because I'm still on medication and have been for many years for some of the challenges that I have. And also, I think PTSD, people talk about, it's not something that I've ever been diagnosed with, but I talk about a lot of the issues that everybody has, the anxiety, the depression, and one of the challenges I had was that the sort of the medical staff and the doctors and nurses, they tried to pigeonhole me very quickly. You're a former soldier, you've been in combat, you're damaged, you've got PTSD. And I'm saying, well, no, I'm actually quite comfortable with the things that I've experienced. And actually, I flip PTSD on its head with post-traumatic growth, because the things that I saw and experienced have helped me become a much better person today. You know, I value things like life, relationships, friendships a lot higher than I ever did before I had them taken away from me through seeing different things. And, you know, one of the things that really irritates me is about post-traumatic stress disorder is this D and this disorder. I always say, drop the D. It's not a disorder. It's actually a perfectly normal reaction to a set of abnormal circumstances.
Oh, yeah. Humans aren't meant to see that kind of stuff, you know.
Exactly. You know, you go to Iraq or Afghanistan and you see your friends blown up and killed. That is not a normal situation, so you cannot expect a normal reaction from people. But as I say, I have my own issues which aren't sort of PTSD related, but they're just everyday issues that we all have. And I think that I always say to people, everybody has a bit of anxiety, a bit of depression in them. It's just how you control it. And some people are really good at that compared to others. And I was really, I think what would be the word? I was really dismissive and almost oblivious to these things when I was in the military, because I used to think that people who said they were anxious or depressed were just lazy and they didn't want to go to work, you know. But when you've experienced them firsthand and found yourself, you know, in hospital as a result of them, I can assure people that they're very serious issues that you know, can be fatal in some circumstances. And you know, and I've tried many times to withdraw the dosages and things that I take, but unfortunately I can't, because I change my behavior and my body language and my well-being changes significantly. But there's nothing wrong with it. If you need some medication to help your, you know, to support the chemical imbalance, whatever it might be in your body or your brain, we'll get that help. Don't be ashamed of it. Let's talk about it. Let's help each other.
Totally. It's so important to reach out for help if you need help, and there's no shame in reaching out for help. You know, it's really important. And if you need medication, then that's just as important. You know, take the help if you can get it, take it. Don't suffer in silence, I would say, definitely. So
100%. And just what you were saying about real people, and I've worn my Bremont hat today because I thought we'll get a little plug in for Bremont, because what I love about these guys, and these have been an incredible part of my journey over the last 2 years, because, you know, one of their approaches to working with different brand ambassadors and things is they work with real people. They don't work with, you know, celebrities or those people who have built a name for not reasons that we might not perceive as accomplishments or whatever else. But, you know, they specialize in working with real people with real stories. And some of their ambassadors that I have the pleasure and honor of working with, they're the people who inspire me on a daily basis, because they're just real people who've set out with goals and dreams. They've come from nothing, and they just go in relentless pursuit of achieving whatever it is they've set out to. And, you know, so I have taken a lot of support from Bremont and the Bremont team. So I feel obliged to give them a plug today as well.
Totally. No, that's seriously cool. I love that. That's such a great way of promoting their brand, because it is about real people, isn't it? You know, and quite often you get batted about that there aren't enough heroes in the world or role models, but actually I think there are, and I think people need to start looking in their local communities a little bit more as well, because there are people doing good things. And they might not be on the front cover of magazines or on the TV, but they are doing things for other people to try and make the world a better place. And those are the people that really do need celebrating, I think.
I completely agree. And perhaps a slightly off topic and digressing, but I did an interview with a national newspaper last week about marketing and influence. And one of the things that I believe over the next sort of 12, 24 months is that we're going to see micro influencers, people who perhaps don't have the biggest following or profile. We're going to see a bigger space for these people, because I think, you know, we've passed the generation now where brands and companies are just finding a celebrity, sticking, you know, their logo on them and moving on. Because now I think society is realizing that there are, like you say, there are people doing real things who can really have a positive impact on society, but perhaps they're not, you know, on TV or in the newspapers. They're just ordinary people doing extraordinary things. And as you say, I think we're going to, hopefully we'll see a lot more of those come to light, because, you know, like you, I meet and see a lot of these types of people who are, they're embedded throughout our communities as volunteers, as champions of whatever cause it might be, and these are the people that certainly inspire me on a daily basis, not the A-list celebrity who's, you know, walking around in his Gucci whatever.
Totally. And these are the kind of people that kids should look up to, people that are doing things on a big scale and a small scale, but you know, it doesn't always have to be a big scale, I guess is what I'm saying.
Absolutely.
And when you say micro influences, I find that really interesting as well, because I think a lot of people sometimes feel isolated and lonely because they look at these people on pedestals and they're like, well, I'm never going to be like that, you know, I'm never going to achieve that. But if there are more micro influences, like you say, it can be more of a pick and mix, because we're all human and one size doesn't fit all. So you can choose to follow the person that sort of ticks your boxes rather than just what all the other kids at school are sort of a person that they're looking up to, or wearing certain trainers, or got the latest iPhone, or that kind of thing. You can say, well, I'm into this and I'm into that. This person's more my cup of tea, really.
Yeah, and I think that's important. I think you know, you have to ask yourself, whether you're a young teenager or you're a fully fledged sort of adult with a career. I think you have to ask yourself what it is you're doing and why you're doing it, because that will allow you then to understand, you know, who you want to follow, who you want to be influenced by, who you want to influence. And I think, you know, that's why I think micro influences are really important, because they're very niche and they're very specific, whether it's mental health, whether it's football, whether it's, you know, education. I think, you know, I always try to surround myself people that are smarter, more intelligent, because they're the people you're going to learn from, you know, not the next boy band or Premier League footballer. You know, you're going to learn from the people who are doing real things that really matter and have an impact in life.
Totally. We've gone completely off of your story. I can't remember where we got to. Where did we get to? You were telling it. We were talking about the book.
The book. The book's. It's been a great success, and you know, really overwhelmed by the support, and now currently, you know, in the final stages of writing the next book, which is going to encompass a lot about running and adventure. It's not running, but adventure and mental health, but including running and different adventures, expeditions, and things, and why having goals and things are important from a mental health perspective. So hopefully that will be out late this year, before Christmas, with a bit of luck.
Awesome. Or maybe we could do like a Facebook Live or something when you launch the book.
Yeah, pleasure. Brilliant.
That'd be cool. And what other, because I know you do a lot of charity work, what's the next sort of big project for you at the moment? What are you raising money for?
So lots of charity projects this year. The big one this year is Rowing Dangerously, which is a world first attempt to row the most dangerous strait of water in the world. So it's a piracy area that's sort of it's been affected by piracy and terrorism for many years. It's quite funny when you tell people it's a world first attempt, and then when they do a bit of digging around, they understand why it's a world first attempt, because no one's ever wanted to do it. But I think when it comes to fundraising and when it comes to raising awareness of a cause or a charity, I think, you know, what I always try to think outside the box and be a bit different. And, you know, I think when you're trying to do major sort of big scale fundraising, you know, it's very difficult, because a lot of people have run marathons, a lot of people have jumped out of planes, a lot of people have climbed mountains these days, and take nothing away from that, because they're all incredibly inspiring things. But how do you attract the national press, the media coverage, the fundraising donors and supporters? Well, you have to do things very differently. That's how you do it, and you have to take bigger risks. And you know, I'm a security consultant sort of by trade. So, you know, although it is Rowing Dangerously, I'll be taking all the precautions and measures to make sure it's hopefully a safe and successful passage and a row. And again, the team at Bremont have been incredibly supportful. They've linked me in with a double Olympic gold medalist, Alex Gregory, who's going to be my training partner to get me fit and ready. So I'm going to be training with Alex over the coming months. And we've got Grey Page, who are a maritime security company. They've incredibly kindly bought me a rowing boat. They've just spent 20 grand on a rowing boat for me. We've got Imarsat doing our communications. We've got Expedition Foods providing the fuel and food and things. So we've got loads of really cool brands. And without these people and these brands, you know, these things just don't happen when you're trying to do major scale expeditions. And so, yeah, really, really can't wait to get started. And, we're raising awareness and funds for 3 charities. One is Frontline Children, which I'm ambassador for. One is Epilepsy Action. I'm diagnosed with epilepsy 2 years ago, and one is the other one is Seafarers UK, who look after all the children of seafarers around the world, people who work on ships. So the 3 charities. That's the major expedition. There's a couple of other little things on the way. We've got Ben Nevis this month. We're going to climb Ben Nevis with the Sky News team with Kate Burley and Beth Rigby, which will be fun. We've got an abseil of the Angel Falls, the world's highest waterfall in Venezuela in December.
Wow.
So yeah, hopefully lots of little challenges as well. I'm trying to find, as part of my training program, to stay sort of fit and healthy and get up to speed. I'm very happy. A lot of people have been getting in touch via social media. So if you've got an adventure or an expedition that's certainly UK based, again, because it's a lot easier from a sort of availability perspective, I'm very happy to try and get involved, support you, because it helps me, and if I can help, if we can help each other, sort of thing. So
that.
If anyone's doing anything, let's do it together and raise awareness and get fit and healthy and support each other.
Awesome, I love that. Yeah, definitely. I am a great believer in raising each other up, helping each other, and like you said earlier, putting yourself out there, helping other people, stuff comes back to you. It totally does. So
Absolutely.
Yeah, mega. Cool. I'm sure we've missed stuff. I'm sure we could chat for ages. Is there anything else you want to tell us about before I round up?
No. So Hunted is on Thursday night. It starts 9 o'clock.
Yeah.
I must get that one in there. So yeah, series 4 of Hunted. It's an extra special series. Obviously, I can't say why, but it's very different than series that have done before in terms of what we do and how we do things. Very exciting. In February, I've got a documentary coming out called Running Dangerously, which documented the last 12 months of me running through Iraq, Afghanistan and Somalia for charity. We're not sure on the timings or the channel yet, but we know it's coming out in February, so we'll obviously post that on social media and things. But no, really exciting times. It's a new year, it's a fresh start. So, and thanks again so much for letting me be part of your journey and what you're doing. I think it's really incredible. It's inspiring, and most of all, it's really important to share people's stories and learn from others. So keep doing what you're doing. It's awesome.
Thank you. That's awesome. I can't believe how busy you are, actually. You're telling me so much stuff that you're doing this year. I feel like I need to set myself some challenges and then rope you into them as well. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining me. I really, really appreciate it. And it's been super interesting talking to you. I could talk for ages. So thank you for that. I won't take up any more of your time. But if you like this video, please do hit the like and subscribe button, and you'll get notifications when new videos are uploaded. You can follow us on Twitter, Instagram and Facebook. If you search @Be Glad Movement, you'll be able to find us. And please do get in touch if you've got a story that you'd like to share. Doesn't matter if it's something similar to what somebody else has shared, because I really do believe your story and your voice has the ability to help someone in their time of need. So please do get in touch. I'd love to hear from you, and I look forward to seeing you in another episode. Many thanks.